From Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the studios of 850 AM WFTL, this is Outlaw, America's alternative voice. Streaming around the world at outlawshow.com. This week, we get into the holiday spirit with three special guests. Pastor Tom Milner of the Church of the Holy Spirit Song, the Right Reverend Grant Ford, retired pastor of the Sunshine Cathedral, and Gregory Cantor of the Temple Sinai of Delray Beach. Your host for Outlaw, a spirited political leader and exalted activist, Dean Trantalis.
Okay, welcome back to the second half of Outlaw, America's Alternative Voice. My name is Dean Trantalis, and with us we have our guests who are active and not only active within the gay community, but certainly leaders within our community in their respective faiths. We have the Reverend Grant Ford, and we have the Reverend Tom Milner, and we have Rabbi Greg Cantor. Again, welcome.
Thanks.
Rabbi Cantor, we were just talking about how you were transitioning from, I'm talking about religiously transitioning, from the Etz Chaim congregation, and you found that it was not being as inclusive in terms of who they wanted to be congregants within that synagogue. Explain a little bit more about that.
Yes, well, they welcomed everybody who came to worship with them, but there wasn't a religious school for kids, there wasn't a youth group for kids, and having grown up in a synagogue that offered those kinds of things, I knew that if I was going to raise a family, I would like them to have those available to them at their synagogue.
So that brought you to where you are today?
Absolutely, and today I have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they go to Sunday school at Temple Sinai in Delray Beach, and they love it, and they're growing up in a Jewish environment that also embraces them, and their dads.
And is your partner Jewish as well?
Yes, he became Jewish after we met.
Okay, so he's a convert.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me ask you all, and something to think about, is do you find that people within the gay community harbor a certain sense of being closeted with regard to their religion? Aside from their sexual orientation, there's like another issue they try to overcome, and that is their religion or their expression of religion. Do you have anything to say about that, Tom?
Yeah, one of the things that I've observed is that there's sort of two coming outs. There's the coming out as gay or lesbian in society in general, and then if you're a Christian in the gay community, the perception is that you must be weird. Something must be wrong with you if you're a Christian. So for many folks who have grown up in an evangelical environment or even a fundamentalist environment, for them to acknowledge within the gay community that they hold a particular faith is something that's difficult for them to do, because our community does not embrace, generally, does not embrace religion
or Christianity.
Or Christianity in particular, yeah.
Is that because of the politics of Christianity that they see and they don't want to?
I think so. I think Christianity is the broader, the popular church, let's put it that way, in the U.S. has done more to shoot itself in the head with regard to evangelism than it's done to spread the gospel.
So it's sort of an irony that evangelism, which is supposed to spread the gospel, is in fact denying those who may wish to participate. Is that kind of what you're saying? Right. So within the gay community, when I alluded to the marketing aspect of your church, is part of that marketing an attempt to tear down the walls that people build up around themselves so that they can finally participate in some sort of religious expression, and perhaps within your own church?
Yes, I think so. What we try to get out to the community, and we don't do a lot of, quote, marketing per se.
Well, I use that as in a generic way.
Yeah,
but outreach.
Yes.
Some sort of outreach, some kind of some program in which you're first of all trying to get people to feel good about being religious, and secondly, coming to your church.
Yeah, an example of something that we've done in the past year. One of our attenders is a very creative and passionate person about wanting to spread the good news. Has created a website, and we bought a domain, that godacceptsyou.org. And our advertising for the past year in the local magazines or newspapers has not been around Church of the Holy Spirit song, but it's been the ads for godacceptsyou.org. So it's getting out the message of God's acceptance of us as individuals and as human beings.
Do you find that within the MCC, during the time you were part of the MCC community, and clearly you've had a multiplicity of approaches to religious expression, as you explained? There was the high mass, and then the evangelical approaches, and much like what Rabbi Cantor spoke in terms of Orthodox versus Reform. Was that same kind of thing, the idea of having the different forms of worship, sort of what you were attempting to do, and try to draw in as many people to accept their religious nature and try to be part of a church?
Yeah, it was a marketing tool. If we're going to use that language, it's a good language, and also it was a easy entryway for people to come into something that was familiar. And if we didn't offer something that was familiar, for instance, we had a lot of Jewish people came, we told them, gee, there's also a synagogue here. Oh, I didn't know that. And so they would go over and check out the synagogue, if that's what they wanted to do. Some of them stayed for whatever reason. I know
a number of friends who are Jewish, who are part of the MCC Sunshine Cathedral. I've asked them why they don't belong to the synagogue, and for some reason they just choose to be part of the Sunshine Cathedral, which is the local chapter of the MCC Church, if that wasn't explained earlier.
And of course they're welcome, and they're part of the community of faith, and that is true. I mean, we have people who go to Congregation Eschayim who are not Jewish, but who find that it, and perhaps they may one day convert. But I think you will find, unlike our counterparts in the larger religious community, religious organizations in the gay and lesbian community are much more welcoming. Part of that was because of the anti-feelings of the larger religious community, and part of it was because within the gay community in the 60s and 70s and 80s, even into the 90s, there was an antipathy and even some anger because of the way people had been treated in their religious environment, and that was expressed to we who were trying to bring.
Well, exactly. I think many faiths were not accepting of gay people, and so those who may have had a religious upbringing found no outlet for that religious expression as they were growing up, because their own churches or synagogues were not necessarily accepting. So that's why I was wondering, when I brought up the religiously closeted, people were repressing their religious feelings or religious expression, and now we have churches within the LGBT community that now can serve as an outlet for those who want to return to that, and that's kind of what you've said tonight.
Yeah. And not only that, there are a number of churches in Broward County and the surroundings in South Florida that are open and affirming to gay people. They're not quite the same as the organizations that we have been connected to, at least Greg and I in the past, First Congregational and First Methodist and a number of other churches in town welcome gay and lesbian people. That wasn't the case back when Greg and I were more active in the LGBT community. And we welcome these churches to be open and affirming.
And part of that, it probably might have materialized because the population has grown. And so the LGBT population becomes more apparent within the community overall, and so so I think the conventional power structure, having observed this, has probably said, well, maybe we do have room for members of this LGBT community.
This community in South Florida lives in a bubble that is totally different from a lot of places.
I understand that.
We have had, would you believe it, we have had a city council person who is openly gay in Fort Lauderdale. Could you believe that?
Yes, I heard about that.
We've had a mayor of the county who is an openly gay person. It just kind of floors you, doesn't it?
Right.
I'm sure
they're
you
very
have
nice
them.
people, I understand.
Yes, they're fabulous.
Also, back when I started in '95, the implicit message and the culture, even for people with no religion at all, was that you can't mix religion and gay. And people just presumed that was the message. And people like us, my colleagues here and I, we started saying, that's not the case.
Well, we were demonstrating in the 90s in front of Christian churches, i.e. the Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church, not to name names, in which that church made it one of their ministries to try to defeat our culture and to change us and to demonize the members of our community, and therefore the image of Christianity or any kind of religion tended to make people shy away from wanting to feel that they could express themselves religiously.
Right, but we also participated in those demonstrations in front of those kinds of places.
Right.
To send the message that, right, and we did that to send the message that theirs is not the only way to be a person of faith. There are healthy alternatives.
And I think the non-gay congregations, if I can call them that, probably realized that the image and the direction that the Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church was taking was not consistent with their own values, and I think that, as you said, Reverend Ford, that they've now adopted efforts to try to be more inclusive. And I'm beginning to see that. I see that in many. Now, even in my own church, which is, one of those ancient conservative churches, Greek Orthodoxy, people have often said to me, why have I not gone to one of the gay churches? But to me, first of all, I grew up with Greek Orthodoxy, and it is in its canons, it's quite clear that they don't accept gay people, but even the priest who is the head of the church there has been very welcoming over the years. He knows who I am. He knows what I've done. He knows about that openly gay city commissioner, and and never is it really questioned. And as far as I'm concerned, my presence within that context is an attempt to try to educate those who probably would say, oh, I never met a gay person. Right. But now they see one or two or whomever, and now they can say, well, it's really not all that bad, or the opposite. But it's best not to separate, because once you do, that's what creates the animosity through the fear and the resentment, and we've lost the battle of trying to make us a tolerant society. Sure. So that's why I've steadfastly kept going to that church, because it's part of my mission, it's part of my ministry, my personal ministry, to educate people in an ancient faith with very conservative canons who maybe need to see what life is really all about. And let me tell you, the members of that congregation are very welcoming, friendly, outgoing, go out of their way to be inclusive, and I'm sure there are others who aren't that way, but they haven't spoken up. And to me, that's a sign that the dominant feeling is, let's be more inclusive, this is the type of community we are, and members of the LGBT community have certainly made their mark within Fort Lauderdale and Broward County. We, as far as I'm concerned, much of our efforts just living here have brought the standard of and quality of life of Fort Lauderdale to a much higher level, and I think the world has us to thank for many of the the goals we've reached as a community. But those who are part of a religious faith, who growing up in a certain denomination, certainly did not always have that feeling of, well, I'm just going to stand out in my own church, and if they don't like me, then it's their problem, not my problem. I think a lot of people, coming to Florida, like myself, to come out, don't always have the temerity to just say, well, I'm just going to stand as an example, because they're afraid of the ridicule, and they're afraid of the condescension that they may often meet. So what you gentlemen have done is create an outlet for those who were looking for a comfort zone. And those comfort zones exist in many different contexts, not just in a religious context, but we have a Pride Center, it's a non-religious entity. And so I think, and you've all been active participants in making that organization very successful. And you should all be commended for that, because, in its different forms over the years, it's now on Dixie Highway in Wilton Manors, but it wasn't always that successful. And even locating your church, Tom, in their space has certainly helped it to survive. So, but let me ask you now, let's take this discussion in a different way. Do any of you feel that the religious organizations that you identify with and that you are a part of, do you feel that there's any kind of competition within those within the community for those who want to have a religious expression? For example, are you competing amongst Christians? Do you find yourself trying to draw certain people, certain congregants from one place to another? Do you ever feel that that's going on? Reverend Ford, do you have an opinion about that?
Dean, there are so many people living in South Florida who are looking for what we all offer in our own way, that we don't really need to compete. In South Florida, there are plenty of what we would call prospective members. And so I know, and I think I probably speak for all of us, that we one person's success or one group's success is success for all of us. Some religious groups have started and faded, but it wasn't because of competition. It was because they just didn't offer what was wanted or didn't know how to get the word out. But we have all survived in whatever area we've been working in. Excuse me. And we really support one another. I was very active in Fort Lauderdale with the National Conference for Christians and Jews, which took on another name and so on and so forth. But it was an ecumenical setting where we met with all kinds of people from a lot of different faiths. And in that opportunity, I had all kinds of opportunities to work with leadership of these other groups. The Sikh community, I knew a wonderful imam that we broke bread together regularly, rabbis, other Christian ministers, and of all sorts and stripes, and was a gay presence, so that they got a different understanding. I was invited to come and speak at some of these organizations. When I got to go to speak at the Sikh Gurdwara, that one blew my mind. They make delicious vegetarian food, by the way, and I got to stay for dinner. But that's not something that I would have thought possible in the 60s and 70s, in the 80s when all of this was starting. So I think starting something for the gay and lesbian community helped us ultimately to reach out beyond those walls. And now we're able to work in my consulting, I'm working with traditional gay churches and traditional straight churches, though there is no such thing. You have to eliminate the music if you get rid of the gay people. I don't care if it's a Baptist church, but but I cross over the line very easily today, but I think it's because of the work that we did over the last several decades not all of us were able to stay. I would not have been able to stay as a minister in the denomination in which I was ordained. That was not an option. So I took the next option, which has ultimately led me back to working with some of those same people. But it took decades to get there.
Rabbi Kander, do you have something to say on that?
Yeah, I agree with Grant. We don't think of it as competition. Competition is a mindset. And at Temple Sinai, where I'm the rabbi now, we just try to be the best and welcome everybody and agree that there's room for everybody. And
I think that because you're now the rabbi at Temple Sinai, have more gay and lesbian individuals become part of your congregation?
I think there's some truth to that, because people know me from the community or have heard about me through the media, and so they've joined.
Are you making headlines now?
I did when I first affiliated with Temple Sinai 3.5 years ago, but now I've just got my nose to the grindstone and I'm trying to be the leader of this congregation. While I do that, I do it with my partner at my side and my
Rabbi,
kids.
father, partner.
Yeah,
everything.
you know, it's a lot of hats to wear.
Right.
But there's no more closet, so I'm out about it, and people can find me and who I am on the internet. You know, which was just starting when I moved here in '95 to become a popular way for people to communicate. Now it's essential. So people who do a search often find me. I've had couples, gay couples from New York who wanted to have their wedding in Florida do a search on the internet. They say, "We found you. We're coming to Florida. Will you officiate our wedding?" Jewish couples, and I've been happy to do it and proud to officiate and be a part of their simcha, their joyous occasion. And so things have changed a lot, but I think any church or synagogue to thrive today is going to have to, from the top down, and from the top I mean the clergy and the directors on the board of trustees, are all going to have to welcome everybody if they want to thrive, and that's the message that I send, and my colleagues as well in our organizations.
So in a sense, though, there is a certain measure of competition, perhaps not between faiths, but in trying to convince a potential congregant to accept their faith, and to be able to find comfort in knowing that they could come to your congregation or your denomination and not deny themselves what might be an opportunity to continue with their faith, whereas before they didn't find that outlet. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. In '95, when I started, we were pretty much the only game in town. Now someone can come to my temple and say, well, I want more Hebrew. I'm going to go to a more traditional congregation that will also welcome me down the street. So there may be more alternatives, but we don't look at ourselves as competition. We just try to give the best of what we have to offer and welcome everybody.
Tom, did you have something to add to that?
Right, I think that our, from my perspective, our competition is not each other. It's the negative perception that's out there of what church is about and what their experience has been with so-called mainline churches or synagogues, where they felt that they didn't fit. And I think our challenge is constantly to continue to let people know that God is a God of love. God is a God of grace, and that all are welcomed in the arms of God.
And with that message, however, there is certainly pressure from larger mainstream Christian faiths that probably still affect your ability to function as a church. Is that not true? Do you find that at all happening?
No, I don't think directly.
Not directly.
Not directly, but I think it provides us with opportunities. Grant had talked about working with other churches and what you're doing now, both quote gay and straight churches, and I think that's the next challenge in our steps of getting the message out to the gay and lesbian community. the mainline churches who are learning or who are beginning now to believe that it's important to be inclusive of gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered folks haven't a clue as to what that looks like and how they should be approaching. In other words, it can either come across as condemning or condescending. And so I think the work that you've engaged in is a very important one in helping churches that are seeing their way clear to be inclusive, to learn how to do that.
Well, as I alluded to before, just where I go to church, it seems like that may be the next level of trying to establish equal rights within the gay and lesbian community, which is to, go to these mainstream churches and sit there, participate, be included, don't feel that you're not going to participate, and let the education process continue. Don't, we tend to ghettoize ourselves within the gay community. We tend to run to where it feels comfortable, and for good reason, because there was a time when you would get hit over the head if you were identified as gay. But I would like to think that we as a community have evolved. Yes, it may be within the bubble, as you described. Certainly, we may not get the same type of response if we were in Middle or North Florida, but certainly within Broward County, there are opportunities to expand the measure of trying to achieve equal rights within the LGBT community by reaching out, branching out, and making ourselves known by being out.
Yes, and Reform Judaism, where I belong, where I grew up, and where Temple Sinai, where I lead now, has been ahead of the curve. And since the 90s, they've even the main line, as we're discussing, synagogues that are a part of Reform Judaism, have been part of a movement that has official statements on its books that we are inclusive, that we welcome everybody, that we don't discriminate, and it's been, that's why I'm proud to be a part of it.
Well, I certainly thank all of you gentlemen for being here tonight. I know it's the holiday time, and a lot of you have other obligations, and I wish you all a very happy and healthy holiday season and a wonderful new year. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
And we'll see you all next week at 9 o'clock on WFTL. Have a good evening.